High in the blue mountains of Portland, on a ridge above the Stony River, there is a ruined town that soldiers destroyed almost 300 years ago, and that archaeologists have entered only 3 times since. The excavations of the 1990s brought out musket balls, gun fragments, and a stone engraved with the date of the town's conquest, and then the digging stopped, with no plan to ever resume it, partly because of the terrain, and partly because the people who guard its memory hold the ground itself to be sacred and the dead of its wars to have never left. That is Nanny Town, and it is number 1 on this list. Before we reach it, there is a cave where a treaty was signed that outsiders may enter only with permission, a national hero's grave behind a locked gate that only a caretaker can open, a drowned town that it is against the law to dive, and a hilltop village the police erased that a faith now stands guard over. Subscribe before we start, because in Jamaica the line between a heritage site and a holy site is real, and the island enforces it. What follows is 13 of the places that line protects, counting down toward the most sacred ground on the island. Number 13, the town the revival built, Wat Town, St. Anne. In the hills of the interior stands the holiest gathering place of revival, the Jamaican faith born out of the Great Revival of the 1860s, and several times a year, bands of robed pilgrims travel from across the island to worship there. The inner ceremonial ground is, by custom, for the baptized of the faith, and visitors who are not of it watch from the edges or not at all. The seals and the sanctified ground are tended between gatherings, and the pilgrims still climb the hill in their robes the way their great-grandparents did. Number 12. The village the state destroyed and the faith reclaimed, Pinnacle, St. Catherine. Around 1940, Leonard Howell, the man remembered as the first Rasta, established the first Rastafari community at Pinnacle, in the hills above Sligoville, a self-reliant settlement of hundreds on some 500 acres. The authorities raided it for years, and in 1954 a government force invaded and destroyed the village, with the site permanently dismantled by 1958 and its people scattered across the island. The Jamaica National Heritage Trust has since mounted a plaque declaring it a protected national heritage site, while the Rastafari community and developers have fought over the land itself for years. To the faith, the hilltop is holy ground and a first Zion. The ruins of the great house are still on the hill, and the dispute over who may stand there is still not settled. Number 11. The burial yard under the picnic lawn, Seville, St. Anne. On the property above St. Anne's Bay, where a Taino village, a Spanish capital, and an English plantation lie stacked, there is an African burial yard whose full size has never been mapped. 4 sets of remains were lifted by archaeologists between 1987 and 1993. 3 were reburied on the spot on Emancipation Day of 1997, with the rights their ancestors were denied, and 1 was carried home to Ghana. Since the reburial, the ground has been treated as consecrated, and no one digs in it. The lawns are open. The yard beneath them is not. Number 10. The dark half of a show cave, Green Grotto, St. Anne. The famous cave between Runaway Bay and Discovery Bay carries Taino paintings and artifacts, and researchers believe the chambers were used for ceremony by the island's first people. The lit tourist path covers only part of the system, and the sections called the Wild Caves, unlit and never fully explored, are closed to visitors entirely. What ceremonies happened in the deep chambers, no one recorded. The tour turns back at the last light, and the rest of the cave keeps itself. Number 9. The burial hill beside the highway, White Marl, St. Catherine. On a hilltop above the Rio Cobre, between Kingston and Spanish Town, lies the largest and most complexly organized pre-colonial site documented for Jamaica, a Taino town whose burials have been dated between 700 and 1,000 years old. The site is protected, the excavations have never reached its edges, and the widening of the highway cut directly through sections of it, which means thousands of commuters cross a burial ground twice a day. The dead are still in the hill on either side of the road. Number 8. The Locked Gallery, Mountain River Cave, St. Catherine. Northwest of Spanish Town, a small cave holds at least 148 painted pictographs, the largest collection of Taino rock art in Jamaica, and it was declared a national monument for that reason. The cave is kept gated, reachable only by a rough trail with a local keeper of the key, and access is so difficult that a heritage guide reported no visitors in over 2 years, with the trail grown over. What the painted scenes were meant to record has never been established. The gate is still locked, and the images are still on the rock behind it. Quick thing before the second half. Drop a comment with the parish you are watching from and tap the like if the list is earning it, because from here the ground turns from protected to holy, and number 1, the town whose dead are said to have never left, is still ahead. Number 7, the paintings at the bottom of the pit, Potu Hole, Clarendon. On the Portland Ridge, inside the Portland Bight protected area, a gallery of 46 Taino pictographs sits in a cave at the base of a vertical shaft roughly 60 feet deep. Taino rock art is almost always placed at cave mouths in the daylight, and why anyone carried pigment down into the dark to paint here is unknown. The site lies inside a protected area, reached only with permission and ropes, and the paintings have never been directly dated. They are still down there in the dark, and almost no one alive has seen them. Number 6. The Pool the State Sealed, Two Sisters Cave, St. Catherine. In the Hellshire Hills, twin caverns open over a cold freshwater sinkhole watched by a Taino face carved into the rock about 700 years ago, a cave with almost no trace of daily life, which archaeologists read as a place of ceremony. The story it is named for says two enslaved sisters, rather than be taken back, held hands and jumped into the black water. The authorities closed the site over safety in 2014. The Development Corporation has warned that trespassers show a plain disregard for their own lives and will face action, and people still climb past the signs to swim. The carved face is still watching the water, and the site is still officially closed. Number 5. The grove where a question is not answered. Old Town, Accompong, St. Elizabeth. In the oldest ground of the Leeward Maroon capital, near the kinda tree whose name means one family, lies the grove that Accompong holds as the resting place of its founders, and by one tradition of Nanny herself. When the historian Mavis Campbell visited in the 1980s and asked to see Nanny's grave, she was told she could not, on the grounds that no woman is allowed there. The grove is entered with maroon guides or not at all, and some ceremonies held there are, in the community's own words, secret. The old town is still under its trees, and the rules are still the maroons to make. Number 4, the cave where the war ended. The Peace Cave, near Accompong. In the broken limestone country outside the town, a low cave marks the ground where, by Maroon tradition, the treaty ending the First Maroon War was sealed on the 1st of March 1739, the agreement that made the Leeward Maroons a free people inside a slave colony and gave them the lands they hold to this day. The cave is reached across private Maroon land, with a guide from the community, and the annual ceremonies of the 6th of January that honor the treaty include rites at sacred sites that outsiders do not attend. The treaty is still in force in Maroon memory, and the cave is still theirs. Number 3. The grave behind the school fence, Bump Grave, Moortown. At the upper end of the Windward Maroon capital stands the monument raised in 1977 over the place where Nanny of the Maroons, the only woman among Jamaica's national heroes, is held to lie. The site is fenced off, and the gate is opened by the caretaker of the school across the road, with visitors advised to contact the colonel or the Maroon Council to arrange entry. The community that guards it descends directly from the people she led, and its most sacred observances are held in private. The Abeng horn that once called her fighters is still kept in Moortown, and the gate is still locked between visits. Number 2. The grave it is illegal to dive, Port Royal, Kingston. On the 7th of June 1692, 2/3 of the richest port in the Americas slid into the sea in minutes, taking about 2,000 people at once, with thousands more dead in the days after, and the drowned streets have sat on the harbor floor ever since, a town that is also a mass grave. Diving on the sunken city is prohibited without government authorization, the artifacts and the remains are protected by law, and in July of 2025 the site was inscribed on the World Heritage List, with well under half of it ever surveyed. You can stand on the shore above it, you cannot go down to it. The streets and their dead are still under the harbor, and the law stands between them and everyone living. Number 1. The town the dead never left, Nanny Town, Portland. This is the one we opened on. The stronghold of the Windward Maroons under Queen Nanny held the ridges above the Stony River against everything the colony sent at it, until the British attacks of 1728 to 1734 finally took it and destroyed it, and the survivors came down and founded the town that became Moortown. The excavations led by Kofi Agorsa in 1990, 1992, and 1994 recovered musket balls, pipe bowls, and stone fortifications, some carved with petroglyphs, and one engraved stone recording the date of the town's conquest, and then the work ended, with no plan for more, given the inaccessibility, the shallowness of the ground, and the sacredness of the place. The Duppy tradition holds that the dead of those wars remain on the high ground, and the Maroons of Moortown regard the ruins as the holiest site of their nation, reached only by days of hard trail with guides who know it, in forest where the signal dies. After a drowned town at number 2, the most forbidden place on this list is guarded by no fence and no law, only by mountains, memory, and the living descendants of the people who died there. The ruins are still on the ridge, and the army that could never really take them never did. That is 13 across one island, a locked cave of paintings, a sealed pool, a burial yard under a lawn, a treaty cave, 2 graves of one queen, a city underwater, and a town in the clouds, and every one of them is closed for a different reason: safety, law, faith, or grief. 13 is nowhere near the full count of the ground Jamaica keeps apart. Stay subscribed and we will keep finding the places the maps mark but the island does not open.